This man of divine mission laid down his life for the reconciliation of all men in brotherhood and love, became enshrined in millions and millions of hearts, and shone like a beacon for the whole world. He was perhaps the greatest symbol of the India of the past and of the India of the future. His legacy is courage, his banner, truth, his weapon, love.
Gandhi, the supreme spiritual and political leader chosen by the people, inspired the masses and led the Indian independence movement for decades, devoting his life to his cause. Adored by the many and hated by some, Gandhi was a controversial figure, credited for independence and yet simultaneously blamed for the unprecedented bloodshed that resulted. Generations to come will scarce believe that such a one as this, ever in flesh and blood, walked upon this earth. Albert Einstein. Ruled by the British for nearly 200 years, India was an ancient, diverse civilization of many religions, including Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs, that now longed to be free from the British rule that had become unbearably cruel. Refusing to live as slaves do or die had become the motto of the people. The paths of three men would cross during these volatile times, resulting in a violent murder that would change the course of history. National leaders Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, Vinayak Damodar Savarkar, and Gandhi's assassin, Nathuram Vinayak Godse. Each dedicated to an independent Mother India, but separated by diametrically opposed views that would lead to an epic battle for the heart and soul of a nation. Until now, the identity of the gunmen had been known, but the true reasons behind who killed Gandhi and why remain shrouded in a mystery.
These clothes are the clothes that he wore on the 30th of January when he assassinated Gandhiji. One person hit him on his head. These are actually bloodstains from the head injury. This is Nathuram Godse, my uncle. And this is Swatantra Veer Vinayak Damodar Savarkar, the greatest revolutionary of India. He was Nathuram's guru.
Born into a deeply religious Brahmin family near Pune, Nathuram's father was a post office employee who traveled frequently on work, leaving his son to be raised by his mother. Having lost 3 sons soon after birth and fearing a curse, Nathuram's mother made a vow to their family deity that she would raise her next born as a girl to ensure his survival. Prone to trances before the idol of their family goddess, Nathuram was a sensitive boy, isolated and searching for a father figure. Nathuram was drawn to Gandhi and his civil disobedience campaign, but would Gandhi provide the father figure he searched for? Destiny would challenge Godse's plans by placing the enigmatic revolutionary Savarkar in Godse's remote village.
Savarkar was a brilliant man. He was very fine literature. He wrote collected works which run into I don't know how many volumes. He was not just somebody who was a narrowly political person. He had a wide range of interests.
This brilliant revolutionary was profoundly impacted by the hanging of two men from his community who killed a British officer in retaliation to unjust cruelty. This young boy wrote a stirring poem in defense of the martyred assassins who took a vow to fight unto death for his country.
माझ्या देशाचे स्वातंत्र्य परत मिळवण्यासाठी सशस्त्र क्रांतीचा केतू उभारून मारिता मारिता मरे तो झुंजे.
At the age of 15, Savarkar had already achieved notoriety as a poet and an effective orator, filled with inspiring words of revolution.
Savarkar was a tremendous egotist. He really did believe that he had the capacity in himself to change the world. So therefore, Gandhi was not somebody he could stomach.
Several years later, Savarkar starts a secret revolutionary society whose oath states, "My country can never rise to the exalted position which is her due without the waging of bloody and relentless war against the foreigner." This belief would fuel Savarkar's actions and define his life, a belief diametrically opposed to that of the Mahatma, but a vision of manhood and the world that would prove irresistible to a young Godse. In 1906, young Savarkar leaves for law school in London, where he would mastermind his first political murder. Reacting to ongoing violent repression by the British in India, Madanlal Dhingra, a follower of Savarkar, shoots Sir Curzon Wiley, the most powerful man in the India office. Despite obvious ties to Savarkar, Dhingra claims full responsibility, is imprisoned and hanged. Savarkar now becomes the undisputed leader of the militant revolution. Gandhi had become a champion of the Indian people in South Africa by using non-violent resistance, but Savarkar, who was quickly gaining profile, emerges with an agenda at odds with his. Gandhi responds in the media to the murder. "In my view, Mr. Dhingra is innocent. Those who incited Dhingra with the mad idea of liberation by assassination bore the major responsibility for the act."
All the leaders who opposed Gandhiji had some kind of cooperation. Savarkar never had any kind of positive interaction with Gandhiji. They were poles apart, different poles.
In October of 1909, Gandhi is invited to speak at a dinner in London by Savarkar's cadre. Gandhi's talk draws on the Hindu classic, the Ramayana, as a vision of suffering for the truth. Savarkar publicly refutes him and draws a different lesson from the same story. Rama, in fact, established his ideal kingdom only after literally slaying Ravana, proposing to all that Indians quite simply needed to fight back.
On the way back on the steamer, he wrote his thesis on Indian home rule called Hind Swaraj.
Gandhi's concept of Hind Swaraj was completely self-rule, attained through passive resistance, soul force, love force, total self-reliance, and the rejection not of Western people, but of Western ways of thinking that were not in line with Indian tradition.
Gandhiji's concept of independence or Swaraj, it was not limited simply to expel Britishers out of India. So what he wanted to expel is the tendency of slavery, and that was more a civilizational slavery than a political one. People were copying the Western norms thought, action and behavior, which according to him were quite inconsistent with Indian culture and civilization. So whether the blacks rule or the whites rule, that was not the main question for him. The way in which they rule, that was the real question for him. The slavery basically for him was psychological or more spiritual, one can say. That idea was spiritualization of politics. Now if you spiritualize really in politics, then there is no place for violence, there is no place for envy. Everything will be settled peacefully with negotiations, with everybody insisting on truth. That was his vision.
For Gandhi, non-violence was not a technique. It was his creed. It was part of his philosophy. You want peace, but you want peace through violent means. That's no purity of means.
Just months after Gandhi's confrontation with Savarkar, Savarkar sends a gun from London to India in the cover of a book to a 17-year-old Anand Kanhare, who then kills A.T. Jackson, district collector of Savarkar's home district, all in retaliation for inhumane treatment of Indian revolutionaries, two of whom happen to be Savarkar's brothers. Kanhare is hanged. The records cite Savarkar is the sole inspiration and moving spirit of the conspiracy extending over a number of years. Savarkar is arrested, deported, and sentenced to life twice over in the Andaman Islands. At the same time, Godse is born, and Mahatma Gandhi would continue his meteoric rise to the helm of the Congress Party and independence movement, fueled by his vision of a multicultural India. Meanwhile, for Savarkar, the next 10 years in the Andaman Cellular Jail or Black Water would be devastating. Solitary confinement, forced labor, and torture were the ingredients of a nightmare that would take its toll on the man and set a dark course for the reshaping of his worldview.
That almost within a year of his being put in prison in the Andamans, his nerve really broke. His spirit broke, and he started asking for amnesty. And there's evidence, the documentary evidence is there to show how he repeatedly begged the British for mercy and that he would not indulge in politics, etc., if only he was given his freedom.
I am ready to serve the government in any capacity they like. Your most obedient servant, V.D. Savarkar, convict number 32778.
Nobody knew then that he had begged forgiveness from the British government, which no revolutionary does. It's something which is a complete no. In the code of the revolutionaries, it's completely something not acceptable.
Savarkar's years in jail transformed this fiery and modern patriot into a hardened, bitter man whose anger now had another target.
Savarkar was sodomized when he was in Andamans by some of his wardens there. And one of the sources of his anger towards Muslims was that.
In politics, Savarkar had rediscovered a place for the religion of his youth. His new strategy to lead India to freedom was exclusive. Hinduize politics, militarize Hindudom, and exclude Muslims. Savarkar's idea of a pure Hindu nation was in direct opposition to Gandhi's view that India was a pluralistic society.
Savarkar politicized the religion. In his day-to-day behavior, no one can say that he observed the Hindu, rituals and traditions and even principles. So this was not so with Gandhiji. His concept of religion was really a genuine concept of religion.
Gandhi was keen to use a language which masses would understand. Masses would not understand a word called spirituality. They would rather understand dharma or religion. He would often talk about Ram Rajya, the kingdom of Rama, but the Rama which dwells within us, and that means is the spirit within us.
He actually had a very fundamental belief in the unified vision of different faiths. He read the Bible and the Quran as much as he read the Gita, though he died with Hey Ram on his lips.
In December of 1921, following the unprovoked massacre of unarmed Indians by the British, Gandhi is given sole executive authority over the Congress Party, and with this massive machine under his control, he unleashes a wave of civil disobedience across the country. Their goal, Swaraj, or self-rule. Their method, Satyagraha, or non-violent resistance. Gandhi's movement strikes a nerve with Her Majesty's government and inspires millions of all faiths across the country. Savarkar is released from jail in the Andamans to discover a new India in the grips of Satyagraha. Savarkar has no momentum, but is determined to lead. Meanwhile, outside of India, fascism was on the rise. Thought to be the wave of the future, fascism was born out of the hardest of times and was seen as a chance to improve life for the majority. Define the nation by the dominant race, reform the economy to their benefit, and oppose foreign rule. In this formula, unfortunately, there was no place for minorities. Gandhi's utopian multicultural vision was increasingly at odds with what seemed to be happening in the world around him. Savarkar's vision of Hindutva, on the other hand, had a clear affinity with fascism and seemed like the perfect formula to inspire a Hindu majority to take control. A nation is formed by a majority living therein. What did the Jews do in Germany? They, being in minority, were driven out from Germany. V.D. Savarkar.
Some of the ideas of Gandhi were actually an attempt to envision another kind of society which will maintain continuities with Indian traditions, but nonetheless will be humane and compassionate and ethical and non-violent. And this could not but seem as disastrous, if I may add, stupid view of the future of India to a person like Savarkar.
Under house arrest, banned from active politics, Savarkar starts putting his thoughts to paper.
He'd published this small booklet called Hindutva, which forms the core ideology of Hindu communalism, in which the most crucial formulation is that those people who live in India but whose religion emerged outside India and their religious places, their holy places are situated outside India, can never be true citizens of India. So Indians are divided therefore into two categories, first-class citizens and second-class citizens. I think it's so important to understand what Savarkar did, because this is like a theory of race, you know. It's something you can't change.
The word Hindu describes your nationality. It is a word for the nation. A person living in Germany is called a German. A person living in China is Chinese. A person living in France is French. Similarly, a person living in Hindustan is a Hindu.
Hindutva is Hindudom. It has nothing to do with Hinduism. What are the features of the Hindutva? That people belonging to one race, that is Aryan race. Then people who have their holy land in India, those people who have fatherland in India. This is borrowing from Nazism, you know, Nazism, fascism.
To further the political ambitions of the nation, Savarkar inspired what he called social organizations, such as the Hindu Mahasabha political party and Hindu nationalist organization, the RSS.
It's quite fascinating, the role of Savarkar in the formulation of the ideology, in the building up of the organization, and then, of course, as has been documented, in the conspiracy of the assassination of the Mahatma.
Several years later, destiny would take its course. After a stint in jail for participating in Gandhi's civil disobedience movement, Godse returns home, disillusioned. Here he seeks out and meets Savarkar, a meeting that would change both their lives.
He had tremendous respect for Savarkar because of the punishment and the hardships he'd gone through. Savarkar used to stay in Ratnagiri at that time, and Nathuram used to keep visiting him every day. He was very influenced by the clear thoughts of Savarkar, not only his personality, and he decided to become his follower. Earlier, when Savarkar was in prison, the whole nation was influenced only by Gandhiji. Even my father used to take the Gandhi cap in his pocket. He also used to announce victory for Mahatma Gandhi at times. But as soon as this man got in touch with Savarkar, his vision cleared. He got a clear view of the definition of a nation, and particularly a Hindu nation.
The same year Godse meets Savarkar, Gandhi and his movement would gain international attention.
Heroic figures emerge because the times are heroic. And about Gandhi, I think what emerges is his great ability to link up with what is in people's minds. What we say, feel the pulse of the people. He's able to build these large mass movements because he is able to understand when others are not, that yes, now the point of discontent, the point of anger in people has reached that crucial turn where it needs to be given an expression to.
The Salt March was a powerful and symbolic protest against the British Empire. Gandhi and his followers marched from his ashram all the way to Dandi, joining in prayer and walking in solidarity. After a dip in the sea, Gandhi proceeded to simply pick up a handful of salt from the flats, breaking an unjust law taxing Indians for the use of their own salt. This simple act of defiance was to strike a chord with millions. Mass arrests continued for months, but the success of this action was evident. Images of Gandhi's war against the salt tax spread across the world and shook the British Empire, clearly demonstrating to the world that Indian independence was not up to the British alone to decide. No matter where he stepped, Savarkar was always in Gandhi's shadow.
He was always very unhappy that here he was, lonely, isolated, forgotten. And here was this man being called father of the nation. He applauded the world over as a great man and a great thinker. He hated Gandhi.
Savarkar and Godse began working together on a daily basis. Savarkar's dream to realize a strong, militarized Hindu nation would become the driving ambition of Godse, who now saw his destiny clearly.
Godse was an active political worker of the RSS and the Hindu Mahasabha, which were, as I said, twin organizations. And once Savarkar became politically openly active and started touring and going around and building up the organization, Godse started accompanying him on many of his tours, and over time became a very trusted acolyte. Savarkar financially and politically helped Godse set up newspapers, which became RSS sort of mouthpieces in Pune.
With Godse running the newspaper, he could push the Savarkar agenda forward in print. Pune became a hotbed of anti-Gandhi sentiment and action.
This is the place where Nathuram's printing press was located. The daily newspaper, Hindu Rashtra Agrani. He worked here as a tailor. He used to stitch the clothes for the RSS people. Nathuram Godse was my uncle. If you ask anyone, they'll tell you that he was a very quiet and peaceful man. He was very helpful. He was also very sensitive. He never used to bother anyone. His own business was running so successthough. His newspaper used to run well, and he had a four-wheeler in that time.
Though Nathuram and his guru Savarkar were Hindus like Gandhi, they called for a Hindu Rashtra, or a pure Hindu nation, as was the name of their newspaper. Hindu leader Savarkar and Muslim leader Jinnah were not personally religious, yet both subscribed to a two-nation theory that claimed religion should define a nation, and therefore Hindus and Muslims could not live as one. This concept of a separate Muslim Pakistan and a Hindu India served their political ambitions and fit with the British policy of divide and rule. And though Gandhi, Nehru, and their Congress Party led the independence movement, the politics of the time made partition inevitable. Gandhi's grand vision was undermined.
He had confided with the Hindus that Pakistan will not be formed, and even if it is, it will be over his dead body. He fooled these Hindus. Savarkar always used to say that the Congress is going to trick you. They are going to form another nation. But nobody trusted him in that time. Rather, they believed in Gandhiji.
The impending vivisection pressurized communities across the land. Hindu-Muslim conflicts escalated beyond the point of return. As violence swept over the country, Gandhi, deemed by many the father of the nation, desperately fought to restore peace. He set off to Noakhali, a Muslim-majority region, where the heaviest Hindu-Muslim massacres were taking place. Gandhi was determined to connect face-to-face with his people. But could one man stop this violence?
4 months he spent in Noakhali, the leader of India's national liberation movement, at the time when the most crucial negotiations for transfer of power are going on between the Indians and the British, says that the battle for the soul of India will be won and lost in the bylanes of Noakhali and not in the avenues of New Delhi. And that's where I belong. People come to me and say, go to Bihar, where the Muslims are being butchered. Why have you come here where the Hindus are suffering? You only think about the Hindus, all kinds of things. And then they try to obstruct, glass is thrown on the path, human excreta is thrown on the path. And his answer to that is to take off his sandals and start walking barefoot. The man is 77 years old.
Though a devout Hindu, Gandhi was committed to the notion that Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, and Christians were all one family. He dreamed of a peaceful India where all could live as equals. A dream formed by his devout mother's teachings, his mind-opening university experience in London, and his harsh introduction to injustice in South Africa. This young lawyer, who voraciously studied radical philosophers and all major religions of the world, would have his idealism challenged. Thrown from a train for the color of his skin, Gandhi would experience racism, find his faith, and begin his fight, transforming himself from a lawyer, husband and father of 4 into an ascetic in a loincloth. His family would join the movement, and he would find his calling.
I regard myself as a soldier, though a soldier of peace. I know the value of discipline and truth.
After his peace missions to the riot-struck areas, Gandhi returned to Delhi to meet with Jinnah, Lord Mountbatten, and the Congress. Gandhi opposed the Congress decision to accept partition, but his words fell on deaf ears. His dream had increasingly started to seem impractical, even to his closest allies.
On one side there was hatred, the other side there was apathy. And in the last 4 years of his life, he felt isolated and discarded. He felt betrayed. And he has said this more and more times that, now he is a medicine that is way past its use by date. And he was made to feel that by the people who claimed that they worshipped him and they were all his disciples. They discarded him too.
He was having nightmares and psychosomatic ailments of various kinds in his last years. Otherwise, he was in perfect health. And he never accepted security. That was not his style. So in some sense, he knew that he was unwanted in modern India. He sensed it.
Long years ago, we made a tryst with destiny, and now the time comes when we shall redeem our pledge. At the stroke of the midnight hour, India will awake to life and freedom.
At this historic moment, let us not forget all that India owes Mahatma Gandhi.
August 15, 1947, independence and freedom from British rule had finally come. But at what price?
Do you know that Gandhiji was not in Delhi when India became free? Here was the leader of the freedom movement. It's like Mandela not being, when South Africa becomes free. Gandhi said, no, I have no business in Delhi. I'm in Calcutta because Muslims are feeling unsafe in Calcutta.
Strong measures are still being taken to prevent further outbreaks of mob violence in Calcutta, where the strife between Muslim and Hindu has now spread to other parts of Bengal. Closely guarded by security, Mahatma Gandhi pays a visit to Bengal's governor, Sir Frederick Burrows, to discuss the situation. The apostle of non-violence must foresee further dangers ahead if the pendulum of civil strife swings too far.
As India was partitioned and granted independence, Gandhi was performing the miracle of Calcutta. Using non-violent methods, Gandhi stopped the rioting, a successful but desperate attempt to quell the overwhelming chaos. Gandhi lived to see India descend into an orgy of communal violence, rape, looting, and rioting. The British, who had fast-tracked their withdrawal, were now completely unable to maintain the rule of law. What ensued was one of the largest population transfers in history across an impossible border drawn by a London barrister. Blood filled the street, and India burned in the wake of its newfound freedom. Two nations were formed, Muslim Pakistan and India.
He knew about the decision when it was announced in the radio. He was not even consulted about it. They made the decision and they gave speeches, Nehru and Jinnah and Mountbatten, on the radio. So it was only when it was fate accomplished that Gandhi was informed. A man who would be consulted for every little thing, every little move in the Congress, was not consulted for this big decision, because they knew that he was opposed to partition.
Millions that had followed Gandhi in the struggle for independence were now disillusioned, and many blamed the Mahatma for this tragedy.
Millions of people are displaced. 600,000 estimated killed in the transfer of population.
There was a feeder road from Sialkot to Samrawala. That's a small route. Nothing. But as you hit the main road, sea of humanity, millions. So then I thought, my God, there is no going back. There was a border at that time, so we crossed India. This I have never forgotten. Some of us stood on this side, we were Hindus, Sikhs. On that side, all Muslims. We both looked at each other. No enmity, no rancor. They had also lost everything. We had lost everything. Their friends, our friends, homes, hearts, everything. And we looked towards each other for a long time. And there was some kind of kinship. Kinship of sympathy, kinship of nothingness, that we both were poor, kinship that we were both refugees. They moved on this side, we moved on that.
It's not the case that Gandhiji didn't do good things for the country. He did do some good things. He had the ability to reach to people from all walks of life and develop in them the willingness to form an independent nation. This was definitely a good thing. And hence Godse was briefly a follower of Gandhiji too.
He had no personal animosity towards Gandhi. None of his relatives were harassed during the partition, nor did they have to come to India as refugees. None of his relatives were raped. Still, he committed the act for one thing and one thing only: national integrity.
He started granting the wishes of the Muslims. Anything they asked for was given to them, only to prove that he was their leader as well. When the Muslim appeasement went to this level, the nation split into two pieces. Godse thought that these mistakes are unforgivable and that the court here would do nothing. So whatever has to be done by me. There is no other way out.
It was such a double tragedy that, not only was the country divided, but the one man who tried very hard to keep it together, which was Gandhi, that in fact very soon the demand came for his head.
Gandhi was considered the father of independent India and yet hated by many who saw him as out of touch with reality and blamed him for the partition of the country, displacing many Muslims in India and most Hindus in Pakistan. refugees flooded Delhi. Hindu-Muslim conflicts escalated. Gandhi returned to Delhi. He desperately fought to restore peace.
The steps you see are an approximation of the last footsteps of Bapu on this earth. With his arms on the shoulders of Abha and Banu, Bapu walked down towards the prayer ground, and as usual the three of them were jesting and making fun of each other. But there was a compact between the three of them that as soon as they reached the steps leading up to the prayer ground, all the joking and the laughter stopped, as if they were going on to divine grounds. As Bapu took his final steps up the stairs and walked up here, there was a crowd of people standing in his way. But as he made his way through the crowd, it opened up and a small path opened up for him to follow in, till he reached this spot. And after folding his hands to Bapu, with one hand he pushed Manu aside and she stumbled and fell. And with his other hand, he pulled out the gun and shot Bapu point blank. Over here, 3 bullets.
On 30th January 1948, less than 6 months after having gained independence for India, Mahatma Gandhi, or Bapu, meaning father, is shot dead while walking to his evening prayer session with his great-grandnieces, Manu and Abha. Mahatma Gandhi became a global symbol of peace and non-violence. Yet his violent murder has remained only a footnote in history. In these politically turbulent times, nations would form, lives would be torn apart, and every individual would have to choose their path. The assassin, Nathuram Vinayak Godse, deeply inspired by both Gandhi and Savarkar, also had to choose his path. His singular devotion to Savarkar and the Hindutva ideology would lead him down a path of violence that would implicate a web of men from every strata of Indian society in the murder of the Mahatma.